All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. Right before we get into it, we want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces struggles when they try to transition from active duty back to normal civilian life, and VetLife is there to make that transition easy. The best way to reach out to VetLife is to do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So let's get right into this next episode. I'm joined today by Jen Eick. Is that the proper pronunciation, by the way? I've never asked you.
Yes, Eick.
Eick. All right. I'm joined by Jen, a very empowered woman that works super hard in the academy, works hard in her professional career. She has a very diverse story of... She's just someone that's been in so many different situations and learned. She has a master's degree. She has many, many things that you're going to find out about today. So without me stealing any more of her thunder, Jen, for the people that don't know you, let's talk a little bit about your background. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? And then, what were you like as a kid? And let's begin to build your story.
Okay. Yes, I was born and raised in Michigan. Lived in New Baltimore, Michigan. My parents still live there. My grandmother still lives there, majority of my family. So we're heavy on the Anchor Bay, Lake St. Clair boating activities across all the family members. So that's something that we kind of grew up doing and enjoy together.
Do you have a close family?
Very close, yep. So we actually are close with not only just the immediate family, but our extended family. So we always had aunts and uncles, cousins at every event. So we pretty much have the opportunity to get together with such a large family every week if we wanted to.
Man, that's awesome. When I was growing up, it's one side, my mother's side of the family was extremely close. And other parts of my family, but they were really close, and I loved that as a kid. It was so great having like your big clan, your big tribe, and you took pride in like, that's my family. And obviously every family has problems, but I really think that there's a certain level of being spoiled if you grow up like that, if you grow up with a good family around you, and they take part in each other's success, and they're there for each other's birthdays and gatherings. I think that's a great childhood to come up with. So what were you like as a kid? Were you big into sports? Were you loud? Were you quiet? Were you shy? Were you outgoing?
I was big into sports. I was big into everything. So one of my parents' parenting styles was to keep us busy and to engage us in everything so we could learn what we liked, what we were good at. So as a child, I was in soccer, basketball, t-ball, baseball, softball, band, handbells at the church, handbells in 4th grade, played the flute, Girl Scouts, all of the above, volunteer work.
So you had quite the resume as a child.
Yes.
What do you do?
Right. Taught Bible school in the summer just to keep us, I think some of that was to keep us out of trouble, the motivation kind of behind that from my parents, but it also gave us that variety in what was our skills and what did we enjoy.
Sounds like you had a really good family and very good parents. What did your parents do for a living?
My mother was the coordinator for Meals on Wheels for Macomb County, and my father was he's a mechanical engineer for TACOM, and he would build tanks and trucks for Selfridge.
Wow. So, they realized structure and getting you out into the world and figuring out who you were and building your skill sets were going to be a huge part of making you successful in life. And as people hear later in this podcast, you've become extremely successful in your career and your personal life. You work extremely hard on the mats. So it's like there was a recipe for success there. And a lot of kids don't have that same structure,
Absolutely.
And they may not realize how beneficial it could be. Parents listening to this need to realize it might seem like a lot at the time because you got to get your kids here and then do this and then do that, but you are setting them up for success, or at least giving them a good platform to build on. You know what I mean? Let's start to fast forward. What were your high school days like? Did you breeze through school? Everything was kind of easy. You were the kid that was just always active, always going through. There's the normal drama that everybody faces.
Yeah.
But like overall, you'd say you had a good childhood experience all the way into young adulthood?
Absolutely. Yeah. I got louder as I got older. So my friends can attest, and my teachers, I didn't get very good in citizenship because I was very loud and kind of disturbing of the class. Part of that is I always did my homework. I learned really fast, and so I would be bored. So I was in like kind of the advanced placement classes in high school and still be kind of bored. And so when I have friends that are like me and we're both bored, we try to see how many pieces of bubble gum we could fit in our mouth. And 28, by the way, before we got kicked out of class. But yeah, kind of just rile everybody up around you. And
No, it makes sense. If you're not being mentally challenged or enough, if you're not being stimulated enough to have to put energy forth to the current situation, you naturally sidetrack. I was the same thing. I was in all AP classes. I got super bored with school. I felt like I was learning too slow. I kind of became a little arrogant as a kid, like, man, I can learn this stuff so fast. These other people need to catch up. Jesus, you know what I mean? And then it does take you off the track. Did you end up going through a rebellious stage as a kid? Because I did, but some kids don't.
yeah, more towards when I got a car. When I got a car, it was like
I'm my own boss.
freedom. And that's when I got 3 jobs because I needed money for my freedom and all the activities that I wanted to do. And
Your parents made you start paying for your own activities when you were still in high school?
oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, I paid for my. They're very structured. They taught me financial literacy right off the bat about credit cards and writing checks and savings. And when you get your first paycheck, you're going to split this into your savings and this into this, and this is your spending money. And I kind of still do that today, and that's really something that I think is beneficial.
100%.
So
At the
important.
time, you might be thinking like, oh, my friend's parents give, their kid
They just shell
everything.
it
They just
out.
do this. They
Yeah.
do that. But you know what? It is not setting you up for success. I've found as a coach that the easier you make something on someone, if you just like take away all the struggle, they lose their fight. They lose their ability to handle problems. They lose their I don't know what it is, like a certain level of grit. Like you almost have to let people struggle until they start doing things correctly. And if you start managing your checkbook and you start doing well and you start being able to afford your things, first of all, you buy something with your money, you have a
That's huge.
completely different respect
That's
for
huge,
it.
yeah.
Your parents give you a car within 2 weeks. That's whatever.
Right. Or I wreck a car, and that would never fly. Never. But I, pay for my own insurance, pay for gas, and oh yeah.
Man, shout out to your parents.
Yeah.
If we had more people in society doing this for their children, there'd be a lot more fulfilled, successful kids, in my opinion.
I think-
because you're setting them up for success, at least in one avenue. The emotional success is going to be completely different. You're taking care of your mental health, finding a place in society. All those things are external from that. But at least they're giving you a good platform to say, like, hey, these skills will dramatically help you, to at least live the life that you want to live, whether that is climbing up a hierarchy in a company or whatever it is.
Right, definitely.
So let's start to talk about your professional life because you are very successful. And I don't even know to the degree of success, but what is your job title?
So my current job title is Director of Operations at Guardian Medical Monitoring, and that's the medical help buttons for elderly and disabled, so they can stay in their home as long as possible.
Yeah, so you've climbed to Director of Operations. Now, do you oversee a direct group of people? Are you overseeing kind of just the company in general? Do you have a region that you watch over? Like, what does your average week look like?
Oh my goodness. Average week. So we have probably 200 employees, we'll say, and 180 of them are underneath my umbrella of influence, we'll say. So you have the customer service team, the processing team, scheduling for service and install, the technicians in the field, tech support, and billing, bill to collect, warehousing functions. So that involves product and kind of product life cycle and all of the IT management day to day.
So do all these people report to you kind of, and you're seeing in each area where we can improve, where we can raise the bar?
Yes. So I kind of have the awesome ability or a leeway, we'll say, to say, okay, here's 6 different departments, and this is all the problems going on. This is disaster central, right? Some days, right? And I can move a little part over here, move a little part over here because I know what's happening in all the parts, and just kind of make it a quick adjustment that makes the lives easier of the people in those areas.
So you're in the business of problem solving. I mean, you're looking at what you know can be a successful model and saying like, hey, how do I make little tweaks just to make it better? That's awesome. And now, how did you rise up? Did you move through the ranks in this company, or did you succeed in other companies and they scouted you for your talent?
I succeeded in other companies. I started in a federally qualified health center, which is when I was getting my undergrad, and then I finished that, and I was a health educator. So as a health educator, I was 19, bopping around to all of the different high schools and different groups, all these different groups and coalitions all over different counties for Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb and St. Clair. And so I would go and speak to teenagers, mainly teenagers and women, about domestic violence, about all the different, pick a topic, nutrition, safe sex, whatever, which that didn't go as well. A 19-year-old girl talking about safe sex to high school kids was like, not the best, but I had a good time, but it taught me a lot about public speaking and networking and all of that. So then I kind of grew through that role and that program into the coordinator for that program within a year. As soon as I got my undergrad in psychology, there was an opportunity. The lady that was running it was retiring. So it just kind of fell into place. And they were like, "You're very organized. You do very good work. Do you want to run it?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll run it." So
Thank God for that structure from being, from the time that you were young and knowing how to structure and handle things.
absolutely. And even working underneath her, I was like, this is really kind of chaos. But if I was going to do it, I would do this. And then I got the opportunity to do it. And it blossomed. And I still have some of the, the contacts that I made at the state level through that program that I talked to fairly regularly, and they check in on me. And
So now you pursued psychology all the way to a master's degree, right? Which is huge.
yes, my master's degree is actually an MBA.
Okay.
So I did the undergrads in psychology, and then you get to that point where you either are going to be in counseling, the counseling, and go for that master's, or you're going to do an MBA into something more business related. So I did the MBA to healthcare admin.
Got it. So what made you decide to pursue psychology at that level? And then beyond that, do you think that has been beneficial or difficult to be in society and look at, because you break down the human psyche and you really start to see why people react the way that they do. You can understand the limbic system more. You start to figure out, what people's egos are running amok as they just smash everything around them. You start to see lack of compassion. And I know a lot of people that are really well educated in that realm that become very jaded. They become very closed off people because they see how much damage is all over society. But then there's other people that, almost want to help everybody because you feel like you have the keys or you have the answers. You know what I mean? You're like, I can do it. And then you almost live a life where you're constantly giving out your energy because you're trying to make people into what we all can become. We can all become better.
Absolutely.
What has that pursuit, what has understanding psychology done for your life?
Oh gosh. Well,
Pros and cons.
Pros. It was so exciting and so interesting to me to learn it. And I was so excited when I found the program, because prior to that, I was in engineering, actually, because my whole dad's side of the family are all engineers. And it's like, you can do whatever you want, and let's be an engineer. And so I did that, and I, faced it's a whole program at Western of just all males, and which I'm fine with. I'm comfortable. But just I wasn't interested. It didn't spark me. Learning psychology was the abnormal psych really just piqued my interest, because it talked about all the different disorders, and everything's on a spectrum though. So, you kind of get a different appreciation for, your depression or your anxiety, because all of us have it. It's just on what degree on the spectrum is it at a certain point in our lives, right? So I think that was very interesting to me, and then I could utilize that when I'm talking to people. So through my roles of hiring, mentoring, all that, I can easily, within a few seconds, pretty much read somebody and their body language or how they speak, and kind of understand where they're coming from in the words they're saying or beyond the words that they're saying.
So yeah, it's a huge tool for where you're at now with the company, for in life. I got a question for you, because you lived a structured life as a child. You were set up for success. You have a family of people that are crushing it. So you come from a really good beginning. And I could be completely off here, but I find that sometimes people that have a great start, that haven't had a lot of chaos or drama in their lives, you know, that really have their shit together, tend to, for some reason, bring people into their lives that do not have their shit together, and they go through an immense amount of pain and difficulty because they're almost trying to fix somebody that they see the potential and they see past all the bullshit. And they're like, hey, there's a great person there and I'm going to help them be that person. Has that happened to you in your life? Have you been pulled into situations or spent years of your life, you know, with people that really you probably shouldn't have been?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So that's one of the negatives, I think, is some people, you can know things about psychology and still not have people drawn to you. For some reason, it's always been this way. People are drawn to me, and it's not in a conceited way. It's just something about me is comforting, or I make people feel comfortable to be themselves or whatnot. So then as they open up or we start talking, then I know who they are. And then I say, oh, well, that makes absolute sense that you would do X, Y, Z, or you would think X, Y, Z because you're referring to a past trauma or a past behavior that you haven't healed yet, and so then it doesn't justify the behavior, but it does in my mind a little bit when it shouldn't.
100%. That makes perfect sense because you see the human flaws and you go like, man, it's because of this. It's not really their fault. They lived through this. They went through that. So like you can just, because really we're all just the same essence. Whatever you'd want to call that, we're the same consciousness experiencing this life as we go through it. And what has happened to us and what we've lived through shapes like the filters through which we then, you know, go through the world. So by seeing that, you almost go back to a little bit of the innocence behind the action. Like, that's still a good person. They're just doing A, B, or C. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you found yourself in situations with people that you shouldn't have been wasting your time.
Right. I find myself a lot of relationships throughout high school and college with, you know, men, like romantic relationships. It's just when things are easy for me and they may struggle with it, I see it as a complimentary thing as part of the relationship. Or then I back into like, well, they struggle with this because of this. So yeah, I might have stayed way too long into relationships that didn't ever change based on, you know, them not wanting to change. And that's the key there is you can make them aware, they make them self-aware, but it has to come from them.
That is one of the most frustrating things in life for me, especially as a coach, as a mentor to a lot of people. It is so bad to watch someone not be beaten by life, not be beaten by circumstances that are so external and don't matter. It's just themselves. And they're just not ready to admit that and step up to the challenge and be honest with their bullshit excuses and all of these things. And you just see it, and I know that they're full of shit with their excuses, but almost like if I try to call them out on that, then they're just angry at me because I'm like poking that bubble that they're trying to stay in and be like, yo, pop that bubble.
Feel it, move on.
Feel it, get out of that pattern of behavior and do better. Like, don't even tell me you're going to do better. I don't care. Just do better.
You got to reprogram. You got to reprogram yourself to, this is my pattern, this is my pattern, this is my pattern. Well, there's a point where it's not going to be your pattern anymore until you're sick of it, though. It's going to be your pattern. So
you have to actually admit that something is wrong, too.
Right.
Like when you make excuses all the time and you're constantly not being the version of yourself you want to be, you have to look in the mirror and be like, yo, you're kind of sucking right now.
Right.
You kind of suck. And by feeling that and being like, by even recognizing that thought, you are verifying that you think there's a better version. Otherwise, you would just be content with it. You'd know that if you, I hope my words might be a little harsh here, but if you're living like a loser, if you're content with that, you'll just be a loser because you're like, you haven't challenged yourself. Okay, fine. There are people that will go through their entire lives, or maybe that's why they have a midlife crisis in their mid-40s and go like, I am being a loser.
What have I been doing?
What am I doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? But unless you make that realization and you say to yourself, like, there is a better life that I could be living. There's a better version of me that I could be projecting into the world, but I got to quit the shit. You know, that's the hard part. And as a coach, I'm a little rough. purposely poke at things that I know that are not healthy for people. If someone tells me an excuse, I poke at the excuse.
Yeah.
And then I let them go on it. Like I'll question it to the point where they have to, and then I'm like, all right, cool. But at least they know that.
And you brought it up. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the least you could do.
I'm going to address it. I'm going to flat out say, I know this is an excuse. And you probably know. At least now you know that I know.
Right. You're not pulling it over my eyes.
100%.
Right? Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Now, if you continue to do that, you know what? It is your life to live. It's my job to try to make you your best. But if you choose to do that, then it's on you. You know what I mean? So the human brain is a whole thing. We could go into an entirely different podcast, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, with relationships, so outside of college, then get into like a marital relationship that with similar qualities of the issues that I had, and just thinking like, oh, it'll get better, and until then I can pull the weight, because when things come easily to somebody, it's like, oh, I'll just do it because it takes me 5 minutes. He's struggling with it, I can help him with that, because there's other things that he can help me with.
But it goes back to that. As soon as you make something easier on someone,
they
have less reason to change.
Take it for granted.
Well, they have less reason to change. Now they're going to take you for granted, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can slack off even more. Instead of imagine whatever the issue is, if you go, I'm not going to tolerate this, and you shouldn't either, you need to step up. It's probably going to be a fight. It's going to be an argument, but actually it's going to promote growth. It is better. I've started to, as I've gotten in my 30s especially, I've been having more healthy conflicts. Instead of just like, before I would probably just write it off and go, I'd be like, man, I know that I should call this person out for that. I'll just let it go.
Yes, like it's not worth it.
Now I'm creating more healthy conflict. I'm flat out like, hey, that's bullshit,
right?
And you know it,
right?
You know what I mean? And like, and if it leads into something, whatever, it is what it is. But what would you tell the younger version of yourself if you could go back to the 18-year-old? You know, you're going into the world, you've got all this information, you've got a great structure. What would you tell yourself now with what you've lived through? Or what would you tell a young woman that is in a great situation, that has her head on right, that's about to conquer this world, you know, that could fall into the same pitfalls that you did? What advice would you give them? Or can you almost like have to live through it to learn the lesson? I don't know.
I don't know, because a lot of people that I'm friends with are like, you are too nice. You are too... you know, this is ridiculous, you know, but, you know, they're saying it's easy for me to say, you know, I'm not in your shoes, but I wouldn't have even done half of that. So I think for the younger me, or the young woman that's learning, when you have that knowledge, and just because you have the knowledge that it can be fixed, you cannot fix other people. You cannot, 100% cannot. So if there's a red flag or something that you're not comfortable with right in the beginning, that's most likely going to be something that rears up 10 years later or 8 years later, and it's going to be the deal breaker for you, because you're just going to get to the point where you're like, I can't anymore, and you snap over it. And it's you know, you give and you give and you give, and that's just something that I experienced, that I've been working with not doing anymore, is getting that healthy conflict out, so I don't hold it in and just let it go and let it go and let it build to a point where you get to the snapping point and you say, I just am completely done. Because then that ruins the relationship, where before you could have, the earlier you bring something up, the less like disastrous it is to the relationship.
100%. And there, I mean, that is a topic that we need to talk about more just in general. Healthy conflict is really good. You know what I mean? And Stacy and I have had tons of them where you set a standard of what she wants. And, you know, I could easily be like, well, I don't want to do that. And then but honestly, if she didn't set that standard, she would still hold those feelings. She would still feel like, man, this should be taking place. She just wouldn't be voicing it. And then slowly it manifests more and more in the brain, and you build animosity. And then one day you blow up and the other person's like, where did this come from?
Right.
But really, it's been there for a long period of time. There is something about, you should, in any relationship that means something to you,
Yes.
you should absolutely have healthy conflicts. If you are feeling a certain way and you're holding on to something that you know is not acceptable, you need to voice it. You need to find the courage to say, this is not acceptable, regardless of how they react. And if they blow up about it and it's a basic request for your like needs, then that's like a big enough red flag to be like, okay, this person doesn't even want to
to hear.
Find a solution.
Right.
Because I've also been guilty of like when you're extremely busy, when you're extremely stressed and someone presents a new problem, it can be like, God, like I don't like, can we, but if you do it in the right way and it's two human beings searching for resolutions or solutions to problems, that's awesome. That's what relationships should do.
Absolutely. And if you don't feel comfortable in even communicating it, that's a red flag right there. If you're not comfortable with that person enough to trust them with what it is you're going to say, then no reason to continue.
Time to walk away.
Time to walk away.
100%.
Just that's like a lot of times I would have told myself to walk away sooner and not invested so much time in but part of me is that's the stubborn, that's the Catholic upbringing. We don't get divorced, we don't live together before marriage, all the kind of that structure has a negative side of it too.
No, it definitely does. I mean, because think about this. That might be your ideological belief or like in a perfect world. But if you're in a if you married a person that is not healthy for you, you need to go, I need to get out of the situation. Now, if you're clinging to that situation because you were told in some story that like, well, you can't do this, that's just not right. Okay.
Right.
You need to speak your healthy conflicts. You need to try to resolve it. And if you can't, you need to say, listen, I'm not going through this whole life experience wasting 10, 15, 20 years when there's definitely good relationships out there. There's 7 billion people in the world.
For sure. And the fear of losing that half relationship or whatever it even is to you should be way less in losing that than the fear of not developing yourself and not growing and letting yourself be what you can be. To sit stagnant in something just because you should is not the right reason.
If you could have the ability to move 10 years into your future and feel your existence and then knew that like, oh my God, if I got out of that relationship, it was the best thing that ever happened, then you would do it in a heartbeat. But it's like you like to think that things are going to be okay. There's a quote that resonated with me so strong where it basically said, the only hell in life is meeting the person you could have become. And that pops up like at least once a month in my brain every year for the last 10 years. Because when I heard it, it almost like it reinstills the fact that we're going to all die one day. We are all heading to the same destination.
Yep.
We're all going to expire at some point. And the only hell that you can experience in this life is at the end of your life, if there was another in a parallel universe, the person that spoke their healthy conflicts, that got out of bad relationships, that gave their best, that leveled up, that learned from difficulties, that built from their losses. Imagine the existence that that person reflects back on and the life experience they had versus the person that dodged those conversations, that stayed in unhealthy situations, that allowed people in their lives that are not good. And that idea has consumed my brain for a decade because I'm like, I will not be that dude on my deathbed that looks back and goes like, I could have really made something out of this. I don't know if there's a chapter 2. I don't know if there's a next part of the story, but I know that I could have done something great and left a great example for my family, for the people around me, but I didn't. I'm not being that guy.
No, the risk is too high. There's only one
YOLO.
One life, right?
I want to talk a couple different topics on this podcast. One of the things is, so within your company, you are in the leadership development and like the employee growth, like really trying to make people be their best. I want to talk about what skills do you think are important for you being able to do that? What have you learned in being a leader? Because it's different when you're a normal member of society and then all of a sudden you're put into a situation where you're trying to uplift all the people around you. If any good leader should be doing that. What has that been like for you? What has that done for your psychology, for your happiness? What have you learned from it? Just anything along the leadership lines.
All right. So for this is what I live and breathe. So I grew into the leadership role. So I started out with a small team of 4 at my other places. And then when I got to Guardian was given this division. They're like, just, it's all you, whatever you want to do. And it's like, wow, okay.
Did you interview for that position? Like, so
I did. It was actually created a brand new role, and I had interviewed, and then I interviewed with the president after, like a second interview, and they were both like, yep. So the VP and the president, and
so they literally looked at you and said, Jen Eick, we are going to make you the director of operations for this entire company, and we are going to entrust the trajectory of our company in your leadership. That's incredible. What a moment. When did that happen?
I think I was 31. So I was like, kind of on the younger side. And the reason I left my federally qualified health center job, I'd been there 9 years, and I kind of grew through the ranks, and I wanted to be director of operations or the COO for that company. And the CEO at the time had said, you're really young, and you're a female, so they're not going to really take you seriously for a few more years. I suggest you kind of get some more experience under your belt, and then come back to me.
So basically, he tried to put his thumb on your head, but you haven't been used to that your whole life.
No.
And you said, no, I'm going to do this.
Right. I've been given wings my entire life. My dad, huge role in my life, but my dad's taught me how to change a tire. I know how to drive a stick. He treated me like a boy and a girl, or, through like the traditional.
He treated you like a proper human being.
Just a human. You can do all these things. You can do all of these things, whatever you want to do. And always supported me forevermore for that, but gave me those wings like very, very early.
Shout out to Mr. Eick. We need more people like that. There can't be these differences in the way that you raise a young girl and a young boy. You need to make both of those people believe that the world can be theirs, because it can.
Absolutely.
And you'll run into people that will try to tell you it can't, but just get away from those people.
Right.
How did you get that interview? How did you line up that opportunity?
I ended up going to Blue Cross after there for 2 years, and ran a program there, and managed some folks there, and IT projects. And then I was missing something there. I was missing kind of the make a difference mantra. I felt kind of part of the hamster wheel instead of hands-on with helping the patients or the people or somebody. Like, I need to help somebody. That's kind of just what my drive is.
Where does that come from?
That part comes from my mother. My mother is huge into compassion volunteering with Meals on Wheels, and kind of through her in our childhood, we would be the volunteers. We would deliver the boxes. We would deliver the foods. Holidays, the volunteers get the days off, and we would do it on the holidays. And so going into those seniors' homes, it's just the joy on their face to see somebody, and especially like a kid. They're like, let me feed you. And I'm like, no, we have to go. But yeah, that was always a huge part of our childhood.
That's really awesome. I mean, that is really, really awesome. And it shows that we really are monkey see, monkey do in a lot of situations. You, as a young girl, you were looking at your mother and her nurturing qualities and the type of woman she was with all of her compassion and empathy. And then you saw your father, who was structured and successful, and you took those two things and you took the two pieces and you made them fit, and now you're crushing it.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah. I always, I wrote down here in my notes is like a hybrid. I'm a hybrid girl. So I feel, and I've always driven to be like that hybrid girl where I can put on lipstick and high heels and, throw a softball pitch better than any guy. All
right, let's shout out the fact that you do kickboxing, you do jiu-jitsu. I see you try to strangle people and they try to strangle you.
Yeah, it's amazingly fun and I love it.
You know what I'm saying? So like the woman that is the director of operations for a medical company that is overseeing all these people is on the mats fighting for her life, trying to choke out her partners. There's something really special in this part of your story. It shows how diverse people can be. It shows that you can do everything. You can put on all the hats.
You literally can, and it's amazingly fun.
So put on hats and find out which ones fit for you. Figure out what does this life really mean to me and what makes me happy. I'm loving this. We're killing it. Before the podcast, you talked to me about a UMAD thing, and I think it's important because simple mantras or simple ideologies that are lived are really powerful. Tell me about that.
So UMAD came up, my boss and I, our VP, we were like, we need to get our team just something that they can utilize every day and kind of ingrain in their work. And we were talking about why do we do this? Why do you do your job? Why does the nurses do their job, the firefighters, the police officers, flooring people? Because they want to make a difference. They want to make a difference for their customers, for the community, for their team members, whatever it is. At some level, you're making a difference in the lives of other people. And I think that's a basic human drive for us to do that. And that's part of our purpose on the earth, is to take your knowledge and what you have and spread it to others in a positive way, like use your powers for good in a way. And so we did the acronym UMAD and did like a superhero video, and we were all posing, and we make everything super fun and we fool around a lot. But that's part of it too, is my mantra is to just have fun. And I laugh all day long, all night long. Everything is got to be a certain level of fun in it as well.
That's awesome. And, life can be that lighthearted. I feel like a lot of people just end up in that mouse wheel, and life becomes just this miserable cycle that you're uninspired, you're unmotivated, and you're not putting on new hats, and you're not going out there and laugh at yourself that you tried something new and you butchered it and it's funny, and you meet good people. You know what I mean? There's a certain thing that's happening in the generation now that you just sparked my brain onto. A lot of kids now, they don't have that sense of like, I really want to, well, here's what it is. I don't think they feel inspired in what they're doing. So they don't think they're making a difference. So they don't really have, like, they're not giving their best, because like when you were saying, oh, you're flooring because you want to make a difference. I don't think, like, Jason runs a flooring company. Jason.
Yeah, I watched his podcast. That's why I thought of the.
But like the people working for him, they don't feel like they're making any sort of difference. So they'll just do enough to get paid and then go home and then do what they want to do. It is really difficult to get your like how do you get your minimum wage employees or your lowest level of your company to subscribe to that? Like, what I do makes a difference, because it does matter. If I walk into a business and their cleaning staff is incredibly polite, let's say the janitor sweeping the floor just goes, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. It makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't notice it, all the little interactions you have with people add up to represent an entire company, right?
Absolutely.
But most people don't see it that way, especially the younger generation. If you have Bo out there laying down flooring and his hair's all over the place and he shows up late and someone walks by and he ghosts him and doesn't say a word, and to him, he's just there to do a job, man. He's not there to represent your company.
Right.
So it's like we almost have to get people to realize that if you learn how to be valuable in a company by thinking like someone that is high up in the company, because I think of like this place that way, like every little interaction I think about, like, is that bettering the environment or is it making it worse? And if you can take the lowest level employees and get them to think like that, which only comes through leadership, then you're going to have, all of a sudden, you become a valuable employee. So you might be thinking like, I'm just here for a paycheck. Yeah, but you're also then that just a pawn. They'll replace you whenever they can, because you don't even want to buy in. You don't want to give your best.
Right.
You're not out there trying to like, I'm going to be the best janitor possible.
Right.
But there's something about that. If a CEO sees a janitor trying his absolute best to be the best for that company, I guarantee you he has a completely different level of respect for that person than someone that just shows up for a paycheck, even if they're significantly higher up in the company. So like we almost have to retrain our children and the next generation that like what you do matters. Like you mad. It does matter.
Yeah, and I think with ours, so we have call center employees. They'll do inbound, taking inbound calls, outbound calls, processing endless referrals. And so we're talking like 1,500, 2,500, 3,000 different things coming in, all these different buckets, and they get exhausted.
It's a monotonous job.
It's monotonous, right? And it's a never-ending, job security. They joke and but it is monotonous. And so I drive home again with the empathy, but this is where my focus always is for us, we're dealing with children of elderly, parents that are aging. They're in a situation where they need a help button. So something has happened. They're either, they're either just coming out of the hospital after a fall or a scare or surgery, or they're wanting to not be in their home, but they're fighting to stay in their home, and they're in like a stressful situation. There's stuff going on. So the fact that you can be the friendly voice on the other side for that adult child that's going through this at this pivotal point And everybody's going to get there too. You know, your parents are going to age. You're going to need some assistance. They're not going to want it. 100% guarantee they don't want the button. And we're going to be that friendly face or friendly voice. And
so you're really in the business of trying to make people be their best. I mean, that's a big part of your job, because if you can get someone to take ownership and look at the company as if it was their own and really try to do their best. However, that honestly, a lot of that comes down to psychology. If you understand psychology and you can paint things in a way to make people realize their actions do matter, now all of a sudden there's like a pride in what they do, because it's a reflection of you. If you think that your actions don't matter, you can do whatever you want because you don't give a shit.
Right, because you don't own the good or the bad trickle down from your actions.
100%. And you see that running rampant in the world. You see people that don't give a shit.
Disconnect from
I can take this action regardless of how it impacts others because I'm only thinking from my perspective, and I'm not able to take a step back and see the broad picture and realize that I'm actually damaging a lot of people around me by being this person. And if I felt those emotions and realized what it would be like to be on the other side, then I wouldn't do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we have a couple other topics that I made some notes about this one. I want to talk about, you know, how did you get into boxing? Because you got a woman that's a director of operations. You're killing it. You're making a ton of money. It probably can be stressful. It's a very important position. What made you step into a boxing gym for the first time? Where did you go first? How did you end up here? Why do you train jiu-jitsu? Let's talk about all that.
Okay. This is fun. I actually started one of my employees, her and her son had tried out. It's a Jabs gym we started at in Birmingham. So shout out to Fortune. But he has cardio kickboxing classes. And in those classes, it's black light, jamming, rap music, Saturday and Sundays in the morning, nothing like it, right? So that got me into that. And I was always so sore. And I've always been an athlete, so I like that soreness, and I like how your body feels after you work out and things like that. And I appreciate like the challenge of it. And started there, and then wanted to do it more often because I was only able to do it on the weekends for that schedule. And so then I started at 9 round. So I started doing that 6 days a week. And then a lot of the franchisees kind of shut down. And then I went to a place in Pontiac, and then COVID happened. So I took all of my skills gathered from my coaches along the way and hung a bang in my garage and just did my routines, and I would jump rope 20 minutes a day and then just punch and follow, YouTube videos or whatnot in my garage from February till probably July this year. And then found here. And
I didn't even realize you came after the COVID thing. I had no idea. I thought you were here before COVID.
Oh, no. I've been here only since July.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've made a huge impact. I mean, because you're in tons of classes. You train in punches and crunches. You try boxing. I've seen you in kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. I mean, you've really gone hard in the paint out here.
I know.
But
yeah, I don't fool around. I get right in. So I think I started coming here, and I started with punches and crunches because that's the closest to, a cardio kickboxing class. There's some technique in it, but not a lot. There's not a lot. And then I was like, you look around and you see the other classes that are going on. And I said, well, I'm going to do boxing because that's, I'm more comfortable with that. And then I started the kickboxing because I'm like, okay. And then you really start to learn. So the reason why I stay and the reason why I do more and more and more is because you can master a cardio kickboxing class because it's a routine. It's a workout. You can get really good but I like the challenge. I like the challenge of getting better at something. And I've been told by people that will remain nameless, terrible balance, I can't kick, right? And I embarrass them. But I'm working on it, right? So I'm going to continue to work on it. And I'm not going to take, and that wasn't in a negative way, but it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to get better at it and potentially compete, or who knows what's going to happen. Same with jiu-jitsu. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, I want to talk about two things real quick. First of all, that's awesome that someone's like, your balance sucks, but that's what trainers sometimes do. And you took that as a good thing. You said, you know what? I'll prove to you I can get better at it. Because most people, I mean, there's a lot of people right now that you even say that, they're like, oh, stop, and then I don't want to do it anymore. It's honestly, any skill worth acquiring in life takes time to acquire. Like, there's a problem where if you think you're going to be good at things right away and then you're not and you just stop, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the first time like what made you make the transition to jiu-jitsu? Because it's so cardio kickboxing and kickboxing may be similar.
Yeah.
Having someone on top of you sweating on you trying to strangle you is a whole different level.
It
And
really is.
you're a woman that's very successful in your career. You've got everything in line. You're using this as a stress release. You like being sore. You decide that like I'm going to learn how to strangle people. And when they're trying to attack me, I'm going to learn how to survive that. What made you make that leap?
I think I've always wanted, I like the boxing for self-defense, that component of it, just being strong. I want to be strong. And taking it to the next level with the jiu-jitsu was I really can defend myself if I know more of the moves when it's a male or somebody that's bigger than me, stronger than me, that have me pinned down. Because once I'm pinned down, I can't do my boxing stance or do any damage.
Wow, that's a very real realization, and it's true, and it's one that a lot of people don't want to make. A lot of people that have come in with like striking backgrounds, they didn't want to cross over there. They're like, oh, I just won't go to the ground. They don't want to be put in that situation where like someone's on top of you and you feel helpless. Like that's a scary thing.
Right.
And for women, there's nothing better on earth for self-defense besides maybe a gun.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like an actual weapon than jiu-jitsu, because you know, like you're not going to get challenged by a man for a boxing match in the street. A guy's not going to come up and go box me.
They're not going to give you the space. And
they're going to try to physically dominate you. Like if we're talking real about the world, it would be a male trying to, against your will, physically dominate you. And the art of jiu-jitsu is the ability to control the human body and shut it down, whether you apply a chokehold or a joint lock or whatever it is. And we have women in this building that crush dudes.
Absolutely.
And what an awesome way to keep your ego in check, to like come into academy, you're big and strong, you've been good at sports your whole life, and then like some 130-pound girl strangles you against your will.
It's amazing. And I love watching it, and I'm like,
I've seen you, as you've leveled up now, start to give some of these guys some really tough runs. I've seen you holding someone down and mount, they're trying to escape out, and like that's a powerful feeling. And it's a good message for women out there that like there are options to feel the way. Because like I've heard women talk about before, like, you know, being afraid to walk alone and all these things. And it's a sad thing that I think about, because I don't experience that feeling. But it would make the world seem more harsh and scary, because you're just being real. Like there are dangers out in the world, but just to have to live with that type of paranoia, like what if I'm attacked? What if someone tries to harm me? That's a scary thing. And people shouldn't be tormented by that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the thought of like, you know, I couldn't imagine like walking to my car being like, oh, I got to check all around me. But that's probably life for a lot of women.
Yeah, I have keys in my hand. I was taught since
heard those things.
College, you know, you've got the keys in your hand so you could use them
But
as
it's
knuckles.
so much out there is like such bullshit. Like, yeah, maybe. And the guy might go, ah, damn it.
But what's that going to do? It's the same
Nothing.
thing. I need to be able to swing. I need to be able to.
It's literally going to do nothing.
Honestly, I'm going to scream probably.
Yeah, exactly.
And drop them.
So exactly. But like a lot of people live in that fantasy world where like, because I can't tell you how many people I've heard that from. I've been like, oh, I keep my keys in my. Okay. What do you? Unless you're just gonna like, hey, just take my car instead. They're like, all right, thanks. The keys aren't gonna do anything. No. You've either trained for chaos or you haven't.
Right.
And like fights really are chaos. And if you don't train in the situation of like someone trying to physically dominate you full force, you are not ready for it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And like people watch the movies and they listen to rap songs and they you know, they got their keys in their hand. They're like, yeah, someone mess with me. And what you don't realize is like you are so unprepared for violence. It's not even funny. But the only way to prepare for something like that is to put yourself in a situation where you're doing it regularly, you know, and that's an uncomfortable thing.
It's very uncomfortable. And I want to quit like every day through the whole thing. And I think I'm on like week 7 or 8. So I've been told I have like 6 months until I'm less uncomfortable. So we'll get there. But it's, I think it's just really empowering to see yourself get better, even if it's an inch at a time. It's fine. And I did do a successful submission guillotine from the back.
Rear naked choke.
Rear naked choke. Yeah.
Guillotine from the back. Rear naked choke. And you finished it.
I did.
You tapped somebody out.
Yeah. And I was like, it was a guy. So I'm like, you better not give me that. He's like, no, it was real. And I was like, yeah. And I was like bouncing all over, of course, because I'm loud. But
literally that's that's a feeling of empowerment that you can't replicate that.
No.
Someone can tell you you're ready to defend yourself, but to actually have a resisting opponent try to take you out and you successfully not only defend yourself, put them in a situation where they tap or they go to sleep. And if it's a real fight, there's no tap like, oh, hey, let go. No.
Right.
I'm going to put you to sleep and I'm going
Right.
to get out of the situation. You know what I mean? That's an incredible thing. We actually had a funny problem with our kids' jiu-jitsu class for a while. We had these like little group of girls like Harlow, Aubrey, Lexi, Teresa. They got so good so quick that they started destroying all the little boys. Like, I mean, I'm talking about little boys would come into class and just get ragdolled. And you could see their parents are like, I'm not liking this
place.
We couldn't keep little boys in the program because the girls got so good, they just decimated them. And like the boys are just not used to it. Like they're out there playing football, they're doing these things, they might have wrestled a little bit.
It's a very different workout.
100%. Listen, little girl, just the other night, Josh Parisian, he's a UFC fighter. He's 6'4", 280 pounds. The man is a tank of a human being. He got put to sleep by an 11-year-old. Like people listening at home, there's a security cam footage. Now, obviously, Josh was rolling light with Dominic. Dominic is very good. He got on Josh's back and applied a choke. And Josh tried to joke around and act like he was going to pick his phone up to scroll Facebook. And then all of a sudden realizes, like, actually, this is super tight. So he drops his phone. He tries to get out of the choke and gets put to sleep. He goes unconscious.
He got put to sleep?
He got put to sleep.
No, it went
He
that
woke. Yeah, because he didn't tap. So Dominic just kept squeezing, thinking like, oh, I got Josh. He gets put out. He then wakes up and he sits up and he goes, where am I? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, what happened? And I go, you got put to sleep. And he goes, by who? And Dominic's sitting behind him. And I go, Dominic. And he looks over and he goes, I remember now.
It's all coming back to me.
It's almost like I should use it as a jiu-jitsu promo, like put your children in jiu-jitsu. I don't care if that kid was the best boxer on earth. He has no chance against a grown man of Josh's size at all. He's going to hit him a couple times. The guy's going to grab him. He put him to sleep. You know what I mean?
That's phenomenal. And that's kind of what I think is so important is, I'm single and so I live by myself. So I'm going to be grocery shopping by myself. I'm going to be driving at night. I'm, traveling around. I don't stay in my little town. So I need to be able to protect myself. And that's something that my family is like, good for you. And now we don't have to feel as worried.
100%. And the reality is training jiu-jitsu, the longer you do it, the more likely you are to have success if you ever end up in a bad situation. But even with training, it's like you're just giving yourself a chance. And that's all you can ask for in life is like to give yourself a chance. Being helpless is the worst feeling in the world. You know what I mean? So between the Second Amendment and jiu-jitsu, it's the best thing that a woman can do. You know what I mean? Like if you're a woman out there that's considering like, man, I wish I felt safer within my own body, within my life, train jiu-jitsu.
100,000%. And in this facility, the fact that it has, the cardio classes that a lot of women are used to, and then you can build on it in the same building and in the same structure and, monthly fee. And that's just huge. And
you can truly start from like
convenient.
Just the person walking in the door to try a fitness class or try a one-on-one session.
Yep.
All the way up to like we have a world champion female fighter here. The Invicta Fighting Championships.
Yeah.
Atomweight champ of the world.
And she trains.
And not only that, we just launched a female-only program. So, like, some women are like, I'm just not ready to make that leap against men yet, or I've had bad experience or whatever. There's programs that are run by females, only girls in it, and you can learn jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, mixed martial arts.
All of it, yeah.
We really have a little bit of everything. So we've gone off on a tangent here, so I'm going to pull it back in. You said you have rules that you live by. So as someone with an MBA who has risen through the corporate ranks, you understand psychology. What are the rules that Jen Eick lives by?
The rules I live by are they're not as professional as you would think. But have fun is always rule number one. My boss and I are happiest when I can hear laughter down the hall. I know we're having a good day. I know that my team is happy. When we have projects to work on, as miserable as the projects may be, we laugh our asses off. And that's just something that I've always taken with me, like from my dad and from my mom and my brothers and all the work that we've done and anything we do together. We just have fun and we laugh. And it's just the main part of it. Let me check my list.
You wrote them down to make sure you didn't get them out of order.
Yes, well, yeah, because then that makes a difference.
Oh, of course.
So then you're going to have fun, but you're going to work hard. And working hard is relative to your own goals, like what your own expectation is, but also comparatively to your team and what other people are doing, right? I don't want to be the last one. I don't want to be the last one to turn in the paper. Maybe that's the competitive, stubborn Gemini part of me. But I don't want to be the last one. So I'm going to work harder than other people as well, and then harder than I did last time. Those are kind of like my guidelines. The next rule is be everything that you want to be. So my definition of that is like a hybrid girl. I was telling you about that. And so I can go from, my high heels and lipstick and jewelry and take it all off and then get on the mats, get in my boxing gloves, and feel fine with either. And then I can go home and I can make a 4-course meal and do that if I want to. Let's see, being flexible. Being flexible is something that I really need to have because not everything's going to go the way you plan. So obviously I'm a planner, right? Type A, a little bit of type A, we'll say. Got to get everything kind of under control and planned because I have a vision of how it's going to be and the strategy of how it's going to be. 90% of the time it does not go exactly that way, and you have to be okay with that and be flexible with potentially a plan A, B, or C, or branching off into a plan Z.
That's something I think that torments a lot of people like you, people that are very structured or that lay everything out or that have a vision. You said it very well. They have a vision of how things are supposed to go. Mm-hmm. None of that exists.
No.
And it's really hard to accept that like you actually have almost zero control over anything but yourself. You can be married to the love of your life and they can cheat on you. You can be the best employee ever and you could get fired. It is a hard reality to accept that you actually almost control nothing, mm-hmm. but it's actually freeing. Once you get to that thought and you can accept that, like, I can just be my best and give an example and learn and progress and try to be the best version of Jen Eick that's, that could exist, it's freeing. Because you realize, like, you know what? I can't control your actions. I can't control this. I can't control that. But if I give my best effort, I will get the best result that can happen for me.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of people that are tormented by that, though.
And it can affect you and your self-esteem and your self-worth and all of that. And if you let it, and at the same time, it's like you don't need any of that. If you have what you need in your mind and head and energy, and you know that. It's how I react to things. All the stuff that's going to happen is going to happen, and the only thing I control is how I react, how I treat myself internally, what I do after that.
There's something to be said for just knowing that you're enough. You hear those words thrown around a lot, but I don't think people get really how crucial that is. Mm-hmm. Like you, in your present form, regardless of your past mistakes, regardless of the guilt, regardless of the bullshit you still hold over your own head, you're still enough. And if you make that type of realization, you can become better. Mm-hmm. You can go, you know what? I'm going to take on a new challenge today. I'm going to do better than I did yesterday. I'm going to be a little bit more kind than how I've been lately. Right. I've been kind of a shithead to people online. And you know what? I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm just going to try to be the example of being better. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can do that.
Absolutely.
And it comes down to first, like you got to have that like self-love, whatever you'd want to call it. You know what I mean?
I think self-love is a good definition of it. There's times where I've gone through a lot of grief, and I've had a really hard time shaking some of that grief, and it seeps into other areas, right? And I can't control it. I can't control that person's no longer here. I can't control what happened with that person, and all I can control is that I get out of bed, that I get enough sleep for myself. So that's like self-love, self-care. Getting enough sleep, doing things that you like to do, that what actually makes you happy. Do those things because they'll get you through some of.
I mean, and you're speaking on discipline because like motivation comes and goes. Both of our lives have been rocked by suicide, and suicide is one of the most devastating things because it's the helplessness. You can never see that person again, no matter how bad you want to, no matter how great your memories were with them, no matter how desperately you want to change the world. You can't. It's gone forever.
And that, my experience with it, through the suicide of my cousin was, he exhibited nothing but joy, high functioning, millions of friends, big smile, big laugh, made everybody laugh. So it really rocked. It rocked our family, and that you can't control it. Like if I would have known, could I do this? Could I do that? Nothing I could have done. It took me. Well, we're at 5 years now. Still,
No,
what could I have done?
You're going to feel that forever. But it's just like when you're down, that's when really you got to have that discipline or self-love or something. Like even if you just start at stage one again and you go, this is who I am. This is who I am on the inside. And I've got to find a way to carve this life into what I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise it's easy to be motivated when like life's going good.
Sure, you ride the good waves.
Yeah, it's easy. It's like no problem.
Yeah.
You're crushing it. But what's really challenging and what more people need to learn to do is like you can get yourself back to that through discipline when you don't feel it. Mm-hmm. When you feel broken inside, when you feel empty, when you're having a really tough time, that is when you have to say, I know that these actions will at least put me back on track to trying to find my sense of normal or happiness again.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people in depression, they just can't shake that. You know what I mean? They're waiting to like feel the way that they want to feel to return to living in a way that makes them happy. It's never going to happen.
No, you have to do the things to get out of it.
100%.
And
Environment,
that was a very
actions.
long road to learn that, and have had other things happen since then that I've been able to, take some of those lessons and say, okay, this isn't going to help you. So
we're not falling back into that cycle.
We're not doing that.
Been there, done that,
Exactly.
not going.
Exactly.
Not RSVPing this event.
No, I'm out. Like
100%.
we're getting the hell out of here.
So
this is a bad road.
We've only covered 4 rules. How many are there total? Because
there's like 6.
I won't go off on tangents on your others. Let's let you finish.
The make a difference. I think we talked about that in everything that I do, and it's kind of like my a rule and a downfall at the same time. Probably is that making a difference is always keeping me thinking about other people and what they're going through and what something that I can do can make a difference for them. So I'm always like, well, James, I'm going to go see James later, and he's probably been there all day, and I brought him an energy drink or whatever. And it's just thinking about other people make a difference. And then you kind of forget about your own yucky that's going on too. And like getting some of your happiness from helping others too, and not expecting anything in return. That's a different motivation. But to get that like intrinsic benefit from helping other people, just in small ways and sometimes big ways if you can. And I think that's a huge one, a huge rule that I have. And being the example, that kind of goes with the leadership. So I will never ask, my team will all attest to this. I drive them insane most of the time, but we have a very, very strong bond. We have a lot of fun. I let them roast me constantly because there's a lot to roast on. But I'm always going to be the example, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'm wrong every day at some level because there's so much going on that there's no way. I like to be the example, but I also want to surround myself with people smarter than me. I don't want to be the smartest in the room because then I'm in the wrong room because we're in trouble if it's just me that's pulling from the air and things like that. So, but I would never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do.
You actually remind me a lot of my Aunt Diane, who is one of the most influential people in my entire life. She's just like, she's a wonderful human being. And she had this saying where she always would say, like, it's all about the love. Like my whole life growing up, like, it's all about the love. And like, when you're little, you don't really get it. But she's a woman that believes in like loving what you do, loving the relationships you have, loving the person that you are. And she married her college sweetheart. They have 5 wonderful kids together. Like they're just a great family. And the funny thing is, she is like almost the identical role as you in her company. She is right below the VP, oversees people internationally. And like what she is she's a phenomenal people person. She can make the right connections. She can navigate difficult dialogue. It's funny because now I'm seeing reflections of her in what you do and who you are. Yeah. And it's the same spirit behind it. She is such a carefree, happy woman that, like, you know what I mean? And like, she's had downs and ups. My mother committed suicide, and that's her sister. That's her big sister. It was her eldest sister. So like that rocked her life very difficultly. And I find a weird pattern in people that have experienced extreme pain or suffering at some point. Once they get through it, they tend to never want to see that again in other people. So they like go out of their way to try to make people happy. You know what I mean? Because once you've experienced that, like you're like, I'm not going back to that. And I don't want to see other people in that.
And if anybody reaches out to me, like I'm always available, right? I always want people to feel comfortable talking to me. And I think a lot of people do feel comfortable in general, just naturally. But about that, like we're not playing with that. So if you want to talk about it, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get it fixed. Do whatever you want to do or what you're comfortable with. But yeah, that was yeah. You don't want people to feel, and it's again the empathy side of it that hurts me the most. I think is thinking that there was a point in time that we all love and adore felt unwanted, and felt that he was a burden, and that felt that he shouldn't be here anymore. And that's so hard to understand from my point of view, and so hurtful, because it's like, how him feeling like that, I would never want anyone to feel like that.
And who knows what really was going on in the inner workings of his mind. Like the mind is a dangerous thing.
It's very dangerous.
It can be such a good thing, such a good tool for incredible life change and inspiration and motivation. Or like you could have the best life ever. Like I know people that are incredibly wealthy that are so depressed on antidepressants that can't get their shit together, and like from the outside perspective, like you've got whatever you want, just go do what you want to do.
Right.
But like you never know how someone's mind is tormenting them. You know what I mean? So like that's where you got to realize like it's not at all someone's fault around him.
Right.
And who knows what he was really battling with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you can't control it.
And those are tough things to accept. You know what I mean? Because you naturally just want to feel like I can make a difference. It's back to that, like I can make a difference. Right. Well, then why didn't I make a difference? But that they're not interconnected.
Right. It's not always something that you can do. You
100%.
can do up to what you can do.
So last thing before we wrap the podcast up, you're a girl that is crushing it across so many platforms. You're killing it in your professional career. You're leveling up in jiu-jitsu. You're doing, you have a very diverse life. What are your goals? Like, what is your 3 to 5 years? Like, what are you trying to do? Or you know what? You're just taking this thing as it goes and enjoying the process.
I got a little bit of both, probably. Eventually, 3 to 5 years, I will likely be a consultant for business consulting. Our current owners right now are from Wall Street. They're a kind of big private equity firm. And so as long as I stay in their good graces, I could potentially see, from down the road, 5 years, that I could have a nice, stuff in my back pocket to, travel and go to all the different businesses that they own nationwide or worldwide, and help them to do what I've done for this company, and spread that around, and probably I want to travel a lot. There's a lot of travel that I had planned for 2020 that
surprise
had not happened, and so that's something big for me as well. And I'm likely moving, looking for a new house and all that to kind of reset after I had a divorce that was final in 2020. So kind of moving forward from
new
that
chapter.
New
There's a brand new chapter open up, and you have all the life lessons that have got you to this point.
Absolutely.
And you're back to your rules, and you have more experience now than ever.
Absolutely, yeah.
And really, I mean, with the skills that you bring to the table, there's no reason you're not going to be that consultant that's going around to these mega companies and looking at their inner workings and figuring out the breakdowns in communication and talking about healthy conflict and so many of the things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. It's just setting it up.
It's setting it up. So, Jen, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was an awesome podcast. I hope that a lot of young women especially listen to this and realize that that thumb on your head that someone tries to place there only stays if you allow it.
Absolutely.
If you say, not me, you can hold somebody else down, but you're not holding me down.
Don't let it change what you want.
100%. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean expect that the world should be given to you, because
no, there's a fine line between
entitlement and honestly deserving, recognition and promotion.
Work for it.
100%. So, stellar podcast. Thank you for joining me in the studio today, and we'll wrap this up.
Thank you for having me.